They told him the old ranch was cursed, but when his horse started pawing at the ground behind the barn, he realized the rumors might be true. The sky burned orange over the dry horizon as Ethan Cole stood at the edge of his failing ranch, the wind whipping dust across the empty fields where his cattle used to graze, the land that had once echoed with the lowing of livestock, and the hum of a busy life now lay silent, barren, and broken just like the man who owned it. His boots sank into the cracked dirt, his rough hands gripping the fence rail as if holding on to the ghosts of better days. 2 years had passed since he lost his wife, Clara. She'd been the heart of this place, the one who believed they could build a future out of sweat and soil. When sickness took her, something inside Ethan went with her. He tried to keep the ranch alive, tried to keep her dream breathing, but every month brought another bill, another loss. One by one, his animals were sold, his workers left, and his hope thinned like the evening light. Only one companion remained, his mare, Willow. Her chestnut coat dulled by dust, but her eyes still kind, still faithful. She was the last living piece of the life he'd built. The townsfolk had long stopped taking him seriously. Cole still chasing ghosts. They'd laugh, watching him ride into town to trade feed for credit. They called him a fool, said he didn't know when to quit. He'd grown used to their laughter, though it stung more than he let on. What else could he do but keep trying? A man had to hold on to something, even if it was just pride. Then one morning, as he sat nursing cold coffee in the corner of the feed store, a small newspaper ad caught his eye. For sale, $400 Homestead, $300, must sell immediately. The words looked like a miracle or a trap. When he asked about it, the old men at the counter chuckled darkly. That there's the Graveson place, one said. Nobody touches it. Haunted, they say. Strange lights, voices, things moving in the dark. Ethan just smirked beneath his weathered hat. Ghosts don't pay the bills, he said quietly. That night, under the flicker of his lantern, he studied the ad again. $300 for land that size was insane, but so was giving up. As Willow neighed softly outside, Ethan folded the paper, made his decision, and whispered to himself, land is land. Legends can't hurt a man who's already lost everything. Ethan's old pickup rattled down the lonely dirt road as the wind picked up around him, carrying the scent of dust and decay. The sun was dipping behind the hills, and the sky burned with the deep red of an ending day. Ahead, the homestead came into view, a sagging farmhouse, surrounded by brittle grass and a fence half-eaten by time. The barn leaned slightly to one side, its doors hanging crookedly, creaking as the wind pressed through the cracks. Willow snorted uneasily in the trailer behind him, stamping her hoof against the floorboards. She could feel it too, something wasn't right here. When Ethan stepped out, the air felt colder than it should have been. Not the kind of cold you feel on your skin, but the kind that sinks deep into your bones. He walked slowly toward the front porch, boots crunching over dry weeds. A loose shutter slammed against the wall, echoing through the stillness. Then he saw it, a single piece of yellowed paper pinned to the front door by a rusty nail. The handwriting was jagged, almost frantic. It read, "Leave the past buried." Ethan stared at it for a long moment, his stomach tightening. He pulled the note free and folded it into his pocket. Probably some local prank, he told himself. Every town had its ghost stories, and this land had been sitting empty for decades. Superstition was the cheapest thing people could afford out here. Inside, the house was stale with the smell of dust and rot. The floorboards groaned under his weight as he stepped through the kitchen, brushing cobwebs from the old stove. Faded wallpaper peeled from the walls like shedding skin. In the corner of the living room sat an old rocking chair, moving gently, though the air was still. That night, after settling Willow in the barn, Ethan lay in his sleeping bag by the fireplace, the light from his lantern flickering across the room. The wind moaned through the chimney, but beneath it came something else, soft, dragging footsteps across the floor above him. He sat up sharply, heart pounding. Then came whispers, faint and broken, as though carried through the walls. Willow neighed from outside. Who's striking the stall? Ethan reached for his lantern and whispered to himself. Just the wind. But as the shadows shifted across the doorway, he began to wonder if the wind could whisper his name. Days slipped by in uneasy silence, and the ranch seemed to breathe on its own. Every time Ethan thought the noises had stopped, the whispers returned soft at first, then growing clearer, almost like voices trying to form words. Willow's behavior grew stranger. She refused to go near the barn, snorting and backing away whenever he tried to lead her inside. Her eyes rolled white with fear, ears pinned tight, and no amount of gentle coaxing could calm her. One afternoon, while searching for tools in the house, Ethan stumbled upon a loose floorboard near the kitchen hearth. Beneath it lay a bundle of yellowed papers, fragile and dry with age. They were old newspaper clippings. Dated 1892, the name Graveson appeared again and again. One headline read, "Local family vanishes from their homestead. No bodies found." Another mentioned sheriff's failed investigation and whispers of a curse. Ethan sat at the dusty table, the papers trembling slightly in his hands. The Graveson homestead. So this was their land. The air in the room felt heavier now, as though the walls themselves remembered. That night, sleep came in restless bursts. The wind pressed against the windows, howling like a living thing. Somewhere out beyond the barn, a faint cry drifted through the dark, a child's voice, thin and broken, carried on the wind. Willow neighed wildly in her stall, kicking against the boards. Ethan grabbed his lantern and stepped outside, heart pounding. The yard was empty, but the sound continued. Soft sobs that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The grass swayed, though the air was still, and for a moment, he swore he saw a small shadow moving near the oak tree. When he blinked, it was gone. He stood there for a long time, staring into the dark fields. The stories, the note, the strange noises, they weren't just folklore. Something had happened here, something that refused to rest. The land wasn't haunted by imagination. It was haunted by truth. And Ethan knew, deep in his chest, that whatever the wind was whispering, it wanted him to listen. The morning sun broke through gray clouds as Ethan mended the old fence near the oak tree. Willow grazed nearby, but suddenly stopped, ears pricked and muscles tense. She pawed at the ground, snorting softly, refusing to move away. Curious, Ethan grabbed his shovel and began to dig where she stood. The soil was firm at first, then gave way with a hollow sound. His shovel struck something metal. Kneeling, he brushed away the dirt and pulled out a small, rusted box wrapped in what looked like an old cloth. The lock crumbled with a touch. Inside lay a delicate silver locket, tarnished but still gleaming faintly, a tiny wooden toy horse, and a folded piece of paper brittle with age. He unfolded it carefully. The words, written in trembling ink, read, "Forgive me. I couldn't save them." A shiver crawled down Ethan's spine. The wind seemed to die, the air thick with silence. Willow stepped back, nostrils flaring. Ethan looked toward the house, then at the box in his hands. He didn't know whose confession this was, but he could feel it. Whatever had been buried here wasn't done with him yet. The next morning, Ethan drove into town, the rusted box still sitting on the passenger seat. He couldn't shake the unease that had settled over him since finding it. The only person who might know the truth was the town's oldest resident, Mrs. Harlow, the librarian who'd lived there her entire life. Inside the dim library, dust floated through sunlight like drifting ghosts. Mrs. Harlow peered at the box through her thick glasses, her hands trembling slightly. When Ethan mentioned the name Graveson, she went pale. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "The Gravesons were good people once," she said quietly. "Henry Graveson built that homestead himself. But one night, his wife and little girl vanished. Folks said he killed them and buried the bodies on the land. But no one ever found a trace." She led Ethan to an old record book, its pages yellow and brittle. There were photos, faded faces, newspaper clippings, and reports about strange lights seen after the family disappeared. After that, she whispered, no one stayed on that land for long. Cows went missing. Horses turned up dead. People heard riders at night, voices calling their names. Ethan listened in silence, the weight of it pressing on him. You think they're still out there? He asked softly. Mrs. Harlow's eyes met his, steady and sad. Sometimes, she said, the dead just want to be heard. Ethan left the library with the box still clutched in his hands. Outside, the sky had darkened and the wind had begun to rise. The words echoed in his mind as he climbed into his truck. Maybe the land wasn't cursed after all. Maybe it was crying out for someone, anyone, to finally listen. The storm came out of nowhere. 1 minute, the sky was calm. The next, it tore open with thunder that shook the windows. Rain slammed against the old house, and wind howled through the cracks like something alive. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The ranch was swallowed by darkness. Ethan grabbed his lantern and coat, but before he could light it, he heard Willow outside screaming. Not just a frightened neigh, but a desperate cry. He rushed to the door, the rain soaking him instantly. Lightning split the sky, lighting up the yard for just a second, then he saw it. The barn doors were wide open, slamming back and forth in the wind. Willow, he shouted, running through the mud. The air felt heavy, electric, like the storm itself was breathing. Willow stood near the fence, wild-eyed, her mane whipped by the wind as she stared toward the oak tree. Ethan turned to look and froze. A dark figure stood under the old oak, still and silent, almost human in shape but blurred by the sheets of rain. Another flash of lightning hit, and for a split second, he could see details: a long coat, a hat, maybe even a face. But then the light vanished, and the figure was gone. Heart pounding, Ethan ran toward the tree, his boots sinking into the soft earth. The air buzzed with static, his breath short and cold. When he reached the spot where the figure had stood, the ground gave a low groan. Then he saw it fresh soil, wet and overturned, like someone had been digging only moments ago. He knelt down, touched the dirt. It was warm, too warm. The rain hissed against it, steam rising into the stormy air. Behind him, Willow neighed again, backing away. Ethan slowly stood, staring at the open ground. The thunder rolled again, deep and endless. Something was buried here, something that didn't want to stay hidden. The morning after the storm. The air was still and heavy, the earth dark with rain. Ethan walked to the oak tree, his boots sinking into the mud where the fresh hole had appeared. Grabbing a shovel, he began to dig, each scoop revealing darker soil, a damp smell rising from the ground. After a few minutes, his shovel struck something solid. He crouched down and brushed away the dirt. A human skull stared back at him, its bony hand still clutching a tarnished sheriff's badge. Ethan froze, his breath catching. Beside the skeleton lay a small bundle wrapped in oilcloth. He lifted it carefully, the leather slick with age. Inside was a worn journal, its pages smudged but still legible. He flipped through it, heart pounding as he read the words. It wasn't the Graveson father who had done the killing, it was the sheriff himself. The man sworn to protect had murdered the Graveson family and buried them here, keeping their gold for himself. Then he vanished, leaving the story twisted for over a century. Ethan's hands trembled as he closed the book. The wind stirred softly through the trees, almost like a sigh of relief. The ghosts hadn't been angry, they'd been waiting. Not for revenge, but for someone to uncover the truth. And now, at last, they could rest. Ethan worked quietly through the evening, the shovel slicing into the soft earth beside the old oak. The storm had passed, leaving the air cool and still. He laid the sheriff's remains to rest, covering the grave with care. Then, beside it, he placed a small cross made from fallen branches. Kneeling, he removed his hat and bowed his head for the truth that was hidden and the lives that were taken. He whispered, voice low and steady, "May you finally find peace." As he finished, a gentle wind stirred the grass. Willow, who had been standing tense nearby, let out a long breath and lowered her head, calm for the first time since they'd come. The air grew lighter, warmer, almost comforting. When Ethan looked up, he saw faint lights shimmering between the trees. A man and a small child standing hand in hand. They looked toward him, their faces peaceful, before fading into the night like mist in morning sun. The ranch fell silent after that. No whispers, no footsteps, only the quiet song of the wind through the branches. For the first time, the land felt alive again. Weeks passed, and the ranch began to change. The once dead soil turned rich and dark, and green shoots pushed through the ground where nothing had grown for years. Ethan rebuilt the fences, repainted the barn, and fixed the roof that had leaked through every storm. The air felt lighter now, warm breezes instead of cold winds, sunlight that seemed to linger just a little longer each day. Willow grazed peacefully in the pasture, her coat shining again, her spirit calm. At night, the ranch was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt safe, not haunted. The whispers were gone. Only the sounds of life remained: the creak of the windmill, the chirp of crickets, the gentle rustle of grass. Soon people from town started driving by. They slowed their trucks along the road, staring at the freshly painted barn and the healthy fields. Some stopped to talk, awkward but curious. "Didn't think you'd last out here, Cole," one man said, shaking his head. Ethan only smiled. Guess the land just needed someone to listen. A few days later, the local historian came to visit. He handed Ethan a letter from the county records office. The Graveson case, unsolved for over a century, was officially closed, thanks to the journal Ethan had found. The truth was finally written down, the family's name cleared at last. That night, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned gold, Ethan leaned against the fence beside Willow. The ranch no longer felt haunted, it felt like home. The land had been broken, like him, but both had found a way to heal. A few weeks later, while fixing the loose boards in the old barn, Ethan's hammer struck something hollow. He pried up a plank, and there it was, a small iron chest buried beneath the floorboards. Coated in dust and cobwebs, Willow snorted softly, as if she'd known all along. Inside, golden coins shimmered in the sunlight, untouched for over 100 years. The same treasure the sheriff had murdered for. Ethan just stared, stunned. It wasn't greed he felt, only a deep, quiet peace. The ghosts hadn't wanted gold, just justice. And now, both had been found. Ethan used part of the treasure to restore the town, library, and keep his ranch alive. He rebuilt the fences stronger, planted new fields, and painted a sign at the gate. Willow's Rest Ranch, the once feared homestead, became a place of hope and healing, a reminder that even the darkest paths can give way to light. And as folks drove by, they'd whisper the same thing with a smile. Everyone laughed when he bought the haunted ranch, but no one's laughing now.